I can also address that last comment a little bit. While I load hers up. Okay, our next speaker is Brianna Widner with the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, and she's gonna cover Decontamination 101. She also, she works for the council and is working on a specific project that kind of addresses that last issue too. So maybe here's your pointer.
All right. So thank you for that last question about how are we reaching the general public. So I was actually hired maybe in August, I think at this point, by the Invasive Species Council to develop invasive species lesson plans for students. So we're starting off with middle school age students, and I'm actually pilot testing the lessons next month with some teachers in Thurston County and some teachers in Spokane County. And it starts from the very basics. What is an invasive species? And then they get to learn about how to go out and be a first detector. And then they learn about stewardship and plan their own project. So we're starting it. It'll be available online hopefully by the end of this year. And if all things go well, it'll expand. So then it'll just be up to folks like you to then utilize the aspects of these invasive species lesson plans that we're creating. So great question. But great plug, but I'm here to talk about Decon 101. So how can we ourselves keep from moving invasive species around? So decon is a form of invasive species management, and that's basically just stopping the pathways of spread for terrestrial and aquatic invasive species. And we're people, we are one of the main vectors of moving invasive species. So this, for example, is a pair of boots from a surveyor who was checking out a lake in Olympia, Washington. It's called Capitol Lake, and it used to be a great place for people to go recreate. We had kayakers, swimmers, boaters, but now it's closed to the public. No one can go in it because it's infested with New Zealand mud snails. And so we had a group out there surveying, and then they're like, wait a second, maybe our gear could then be spreading it to other places as well. We better check. So they had to clean off the bottom of this pair of boots and count how many New Zealand mud snails they found. So does anyone want to wager a guess on how many snails were on this one pair of dirty boots? 480, 50, I heard. Any other guesses? 26. All right, we're all over the board here. No wrong, well, wrong answers, but good guesses all. So there were 102 New Zealand mud snails on this pair of boots alone, and it only takes one New Zealand mud snail to start a new infestation. They can reproduce on their own. They don't need any help. So one female mud snail, and off we'd go, shutting down other lakes. So very important to clean our gear. I'll sort of glaze over this. We know what invasive species are in this room. But one note about in Washington, in our definition of invasive species, we do exclude livestock or intentionally planted crops. So not everything from other places is bad. It's just if it gets loose and gets wild and spreads out of human control. So just something to keep in mind. And Clinton did a great job of highlighting how these things spread. Again, just to highlight people letting loose their no longer beloved pets. We have some treatment ponds in Lacey, Washington, which is right near Olympia, and it's infested with African clawed frogs. We don't know who put them in there. We have some theories, but now they're in there and we can't get them out. We've tried salting the ponds and treating them in other ways, but we just can't get rid of them yet. So we've had to actually fence off those ponds because they carry ranavirus, which is a disease that could harm our native amphibians. So something as simple as someone dumping an unwanted frog or two started some invasions. We're going to talk about the dirty boots we all have and boats. Clinton was definitely talking about this new international trade being a great vector for invasive pests. And this is one of my favorite photos we have in our presentations. Does anyone have any idea what this sort of like orange sausage looking thing is? No? Snake? Yes, I heard snake. Yes, this is a snake curled up happily in someone's luggage, either intentionally or unintentionally. I don't know the background story. However, it's just another point that as we travel ourselves, we can be great vectors for moving invasive species. So don't let them hitchhike with you, and we're going to learn how to prevent this. So First step, don't do it intentionally. Second step, arm yourselves. So basic invasive species management tips. Know before you go. So arm yourselves with knowledge. You're already doing that today by learning what to be on the lookout for and how to report it. But it's basic things like know what invasive species might be at your work sites before you go out there. And if you don't know, if there's a project lead, ask them, someone who hired you to work the job. They should know what's in the area. There are also some databases online you can check out, but know what you might have to prepare yourself for as far as decontamination goes. And just regularly inspect and clean your gear, especially before going to a new location. And that can be as simple as just looking down at your boots. Are there seeds? Are there burrs? If so, just wipe them off. If you have a trash can, put them in the trash. If not, brush them up on site. Because obviously you picked those seeds up on that site. It's already there, so keep it where it is. Don't help it spread somewhere else. Minimize your contact with vegetation and sediment. A very simple thing, but I know myself, I tend to want to wander off the trail. It's a little more fun and adventurous, but staying on the trail is great for preventing the spread of invasive species. And this goes for your boats and your work vehicles as well. So if there's a trail, stay on it. Don't park them in the weeds. And also just save yourself the hassle of cleaning up later. The less you get on your gear and yourself, the less you're going to have to deal with. And another non-invasive hitchhiker, but you might pick up ticks or other things going through the weeds. So just so many incentives to stay on the trail. Bless you. So if you know an invasive species is present, use dedicated gear for that site or water body. That's definitely more for things such as pathogens like white nose syndrome, something that's very easy to spread, something you can't see. There's quagga and zebra mussels. Luckily, we do not have those in Washington, but you wouldn't want to be moving your equipment around for that. So if you have the luxury of dedicating gear to a site, go for it. And then choose equipment that can be easily decontaminated. So some things are easier to clean than others. So if you have boots, for example, felt-soled boots, while they do help with grip, they're a lot harder to clean properly. So it's nicer to use something like rubber that's easy to wash off. Try to find things that don't have too many grooves in the bottom, too many nooks and crannies for things to hide. If you can, choose equipment that has one piece rather than multiple pieces, because any nook you give an invasive species, they're going to try to hitchhike that way. And then bringing backups is a great option too, because I've worked in the field quite a bit, and I know a lot of times we didn't have time to clean our gear while we were out there. You were on a strict schedule, you had a couple hours here, and then you had another site an hour out of the way that you had to get to and treat as well. So if you have to do that, maybe have a separate tote in your work vehicle with fresh gear that you can put on at your new site. So just don't spread things. There's many options. And then just extra considerations if you're doing construction or restoration projects, use weed-free materials. So make sure the people you're buying it from, it's certified weed-free, because we all want job security, but we don't want it by planting an invasive species garden. It's not the right way. We have plenty of work already. So check your fill, check your hay, check it before you go. Save yourself a lot of hassle in the future. Assess your site for existing invasive species. That goes back to the know before you go. So see what's there beforehand. And if you have to clear a path for your work crew so that you're not constantly walking through the weeds, take the half an hour to clear a path. It'll save you so much time in the long run cleaning your gear afterwards. Minimize disturbing the vegetation. Same idea as before, and then train your project team. They're likely not going to be invasive species experts. You will be the invasive species expert for your team. So tell them what to be on the lookout for, what to report to you, and how to clean for it. So that's on you guys, but you're here learning that today. All right, so you know how to avoid the pests, but we do have to do some decon as well. So there are two different levels of decontamination. Level 1, we should all be doing every time we leave a site, and this is just basic removal. So it reduces the risk of spreading invasive species to new sites. And then level 2, this is for special occasions. It's for complete eradication. It's going to kill all the remaining invasive species after level 1. So if you are in a situation where you do level 2 decon, you should have done level 1 first. So everyone is going to do level 1, and that is simple stuff. So clean your gear. That goes back to the checking yourself for seeds, brush them off on the site, throw them away if you can, scrub off your boots. So just get all the debris and organisms off your equipment. If you're in an aquatic situation, drain your gear. So any water you've collected from that site, drain it back on site, and then simply rinse off your equipment. Rinse off your boots, rinse off your measuring equipment, simple stuff. So clean, drain if it's applicable, and rinse. And simple as it is, it takes very basic equipment as well, stuff that we can all invest in. So a boot brush with a mud pick for your boots, rinse water to rinse off all your gear. I mentioned a tote. Those are handy. Again, if you don't have time to clean in the field, have a tote for your dirty gear to keep it away from all your equipment that you just cleaned. And then I like to add a dog brush too, because a lot of folks here are lucky enough to have dogs they get to bring to work or when you're out hiking. So just your general knowledge, bring a dog brush as well, because our furry friends are a great vector for seeds. And this is a tip that the King County Weed Group gave to me: make a boot buddy, because I'm pretty balanced, but even I have trouble cleaning my own boots. So if you just plop down on the ground, find a buddy, you can see better, and you generally clean other people's stuff better than your own. If someone lends you something, you're going to take better care of it. So, it's just fun. Okay, so those are the basics that we should all do anytime we leave a site. But then sometimes we got to kick it up a notch, so we go to Decon level 2. And this, again, our objective is to eradicate. And the times you want to do Decon level 2 is after working in infested water, so know before you go, is this something that applies to you? Before going to a sensitive area, and that's sort of a nebulous term. This could be places that have endangered species. It could be a new restoration site. So you can sort of have to use your discretion on that one. And then moving between what we call RIAs and geographic basins. So these maps are easily, you just Google a RIA map, so know if you're going between a different watershed. There are many ways to do Decon 2. It is more intensive than Decon 1, so you just have to choose whatever your organization is capable of doing. It's not a one-fit-all for people. This chart is available. I got it from the Washington Department of Ecology. So if you can't memorize it now, and this will be available after the fact too. So don't feel like you have to write it all down. But again, there are many different options, and we're just going to highlight some of our favorite, most effective. Favorite choice is hot water decon. This is great because it doesn't involve chemicals, and it's very effective and pretty simple. So 140 degrees Fahrenheit water for 15 seconds on a pair of rubber boots, you're going to kill everything on it. We do have a spectrum of 15 seconds to 5 minutes because, like I said, some gear like the porous felt boots or cloth nets, you want to hit it for 5 minutes because more things can soak into it. But again, it's environmentally friendly. This is the top choice by the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it's pretty simple as well. So if you do know of an organization in your area that might have one, let you use it, that'd be great. But again, WDFW down in Olympia, this is what they use first off. But their second choice is using this chemical called Virkon Aquatic, and it's very simple to use. You use a 2% solution for a 20-minute bath. WDFW has a great way they do this. They'll have another one of those reusable plastic totes. They'll whip up their solution before going into the field and bring it out with them. And then after they're done doing their sampling, their work, whatever they've done their level 1 decons, they've got all the muck off their gear, and then they dump it in that tote of Virkon Aquatic, scrub it off, and let it sit there for 20 minutes. So you can use that 20 minutes to drive to your next field site, take a stretch break, take your lunch break, so you don't have to build in much time for decon. You can do this properly and be time efficient. When you get to your new site, pull out your gear, rinse it off, and off you go. You're good to go. You definitely want to rinse off your gear well if you use the Virkon Aquatic method, because like any chemical, it will degrade your equipment over time. So the better you rinse it off, the longer your equipment will last. And then a huge point, you got to capture this rinse water and properly dispose it. That goes for any chemical, any level 2 decon method. Please dispose of it properly, and you just got to read the label. Whatever the label says from the manufacturers, follow that. So that's your pesticide plug for today. Read the label. And then for boaters, you have a couple extra steps, and your extra step is drying your equipment. It's a huge step. Quagga zebra mussels, like I mentioned, we don't have them here. We don't want them here. And the recommended time for drying is 30 days for drying your boats. That way all the mussels that might be on it, any veligers on it, will dry up. It does vary. There are some boat drying guidelines. If it's a very dry climate, for example, and very hot, you can have less time for drying. If it's a very cold or humid climate, you might have to keep it longer for drying, but we try to use that 30-day rule of thumb. Now, there are some options around the state. We're trying to make it easier for boaters to decon their boat because it can be, a pretty onerous task to clean, drain, and dry a huge vessel. So WDFW has these new decon stations set up at Ephrata and Spokane, and it's a free place to decontaminate your boat. And if you go through this method, you don't actually have to dry your boat off using this particular apparatus. And there is a mobile boat decon unit in Whatcom County. And I know Tegan Ward would be the one to talk about it. I don't know if she has, I think she's here. Yeah. So you could talk about renting that for your group as well, using that. And then WDFW is also purchasing these units called CD3 units. They're waterless units that will help boat they'll be at different boat ramps around the state and will help boaters clean off their boats. They'll still have to dry their boats, but it will help with the cleaning process. So we're trying to make it easier for boaters to do the right thing, do the level 2 decon. So if this is applicable to you, know there are options out there, and we're always trying to make it easier. And we do stop boats at our mandatory check stations around the state. And these are really designed to be outreach and education. We're not trying to get people, we're not trying to get them in trouble for harboring invasive species. We really want to let them know what they need to do. It only takes a couple minutes, and they're immune to getting in trouble from invasive species citations if they follow the directions we give them. So we have a check station at Spokane and Plymouth and some roving stations. And these are going to be even a little more exciting because we are soon hopefully getting a mussel sniffing dog for the state. So it might help people stop a little more. It'll be a great outreach and education tool. So be on the lookout in the next couple months, hopefully, if all things go to plan. And then while you're out there, like Justin said, we need you to be our eyes and ears in the field. So if you see something, say something. We have a great reporting tool for people out there. There are different options. So if you like to call, we have a couple phone numbers. There is our website, but I think the easiest way to go about making a report nowadays is using our mobile app. It's the Washington Invasives app. It's for your iPhone or your Android phone. And what I like about it, there's a couple things I like about it, but it's a field guide as well as a reporting tool. So we have all of the state priority species, quite a few noxious weeds, and we're always trying to add more. You can use it when you do not have a connection, like an internet connection. You can just take a picture, it'll save your report, and you can upload it after the fact once you're back in the world of Wi-Fi. So it's a very handy tool. So if you see something, say something. The reports come to the Invasive Species Council, and then we send them out to our project partners who are the experts in that field. So if you give us a strange bug picture, we're going to send that to WSSDA, and they'll let us know, hey, that's not a brown marbury distinct bug. Don't worry about it. Or if it is, we'll go out and take care of it. So all of this data is then stored on a national database that anyone has access to. It's called EdMaps, and all the verified reports are stored there. So it might be a great resource for that know before you go. Check what's been found in the area where you're going to work. So please help us out. That would be great. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Thank you. Right in the middle there. But
so is the Washington Invasive Species Council not using reports from the EdMaps app? Is it recommended to move to the WA Invasives app?
I'm gonna let my supervisor field that question, because I don't think we really care either way per se, because all of the data goes to the same place. But Justin.
It's a great question. So the Washington Invasives app is powered by EdMaps. And so any EdMaps app, if there's like 20 nowadays, it all goes to the same database and triggers the same alert to us. So within Washington, we all get the reports. So don't feel obligated, but it is handy. And nowadays, you know, like IMAP invasives and all these different things, there's data sharing agreements. And so I guess don't get hung up if you have your own favorite app that's not EdMaps related. As long as they're sharing that information, we should get it at some point.
You mentioned that WSDA is also working county weed boards and using EdMaps and getting that out to counties as well.
I think you just did. Yeah, so Washington State Department of Agriculture has their own program using our collector and their own state database that's available for counties to use and others. But what's important about that is that information is being shared with that national database. So, you know, again, you know, don't get too hung up on how you report it. Just ensure that they're sharing it with others. That's the main thing, right?
But if you don't have a favorite app, Washington Invasives, check it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are there any plans to have inspection stations coming in from Canada and coming up from Oregon?
That's a great question.
pass it on
I
to
see
Alan?
Alan Ployce. Alan, do you want to take this one? So Alan Ployce is the Aquatic Invasive Species Unit Lead for the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Great, thank you. Right now, our money is spent for Washington, for the Washington. Sorry, I'm having a brain freeze here. Anyways, watercraft inspection stations. There we go. Got the right file in my head going. We have one in Spokane and we have one in Plymouth. At this time, that's where the money is, and that's where we have to spend it, is the Columbia River Basin, protecting the Columbia River Basin. And we would really like to have a check station in Richfield coming up from Oregon. And we would also like to have one coming down from Canada at this time. Martina is here, so BC is protecting our north flank, and we also have Oregon. They have check stations. California has check stations. So it's not that we're unprotected in those areas, but we would like to have more of our permanent check stations in the other locations than the two that we have right now. Does that answer your question? There is no money to do that. And so we will be putting together a package, hopefully for the 2021 legislature, to say we would like to have more of these check stations at these locations and see what kind of funding we can get. Right now, most of that funding is coming from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and through federal funds, it's a matching, and that's specific to the Columbia River Basin area.
I write permits for shoreline projects, and I do require that they use the hay that's designated noxious weed free, but I haven't ever asked for proof that that's what they're using. And I was wondering if you know how easily accessible that is, or if it's more expensive, just so I can get an idea of, like, maybe I should be asking for the documentation on it.
Someone from Washington State Department of Agriculture like to answer? I can try to answer. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mary. Hi. Yeah, this is great. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mary Fee. I'm with the Washington State Noxious Weed Board, and we have a statewide program called WHAM, which is Weed-Free Hay and Mulch, and that's actually administered by the WSDA right now. And you can go to the WSDA website, and they have a list of providers of that noxious weed-free hay, and also the certification process too. So, but yeah.
But I think she was asking also for the people who say they are using it, like how easy would it be for your permit applicators to like verify that they got it certified? That was your question as well? Oh, okay, you're certifying. Okay. Okay.
So each grower, when we go out and certify the fields, there's a whole process to that. And then they have a form that they keep, whoever has that hay. And then each bale is tagged or has a purple and yellow twine on it. So if it has a tag or a twine, then you know that that bale has been inspected. Is that what you're asking more? Okay, awesome.
And then if you go to the website that Mary referenced, there's like a list of suppliers as well as costs, and costs can vary wildly based on the area, to my understanding.
I guess just a quick point to add to the looking at decontaminating boats, just to be conscious if you're looking at applying temperatures, that different parts of the boat need to have different contact times, because a lot of the internal compartments like ballast tanks and internal engine systems need to have slightly lower temperatures because it can cause damage. So you just want to be careful about what temperatures you're using. So definitely taking advantage of those facilities that have the trained inspectors, because they know the appropriate contact times to use just to prevent any damage from happening. And also just to be very careful when using those pressure washers, because they can definitely do harm if they're not used right. But they're great tools. Just being careful about those different pieces, and definitely using those great facilities that the state now has is a good way to go.